Thousands of people have died in the storm here recently. Thousands, not hundreds. I called a friend up in Pennsylvania and I said, "Jack, how many people died in the storm down here?"
They say every barn tells a story, but the one hidden deep in the mountains of North Carolina, owned by the legendary Eustace Conway, holds secrets no one expected. People thought they knew Eustace, the wild-hearted survivalist from Mountain Men, the man who turned away from modern comforts to build a life rooted in raw nature, tradition, and grit. But what investigators, friends, and stunned witnesses recently discovered inside his private barn has left the entire community speechless. And questioning everything they thought they knew about him, Eustace Conway has always lived differently, a warrior of the old way, a man who trades comfort for authenticity. His land, Turtle Island Preserve, is a sanctuary for nature lovers, a training ground for those seeking to reclaim forgotten skills, and a refuge from the noise of the modern world. But behind the rugged charm and the humble cabins lies a story darker, more mysterious, and far more emotional than anyone ever imagined. For years, rumors whispered through the mountains that Eustace had been storing something in that barn, guarding it with a vigilance bordering on obsession. Some believed it was survival gear. Others thought it was priceless historical artifacts. A few even speculated about hidden treasure, rare tools, old-world relics, maps to forgotten frontiers. No one could have predicted the truth. When the doors finally opened, what they saw changed everything. Not just about Eustace Conway, but about the price a man pays to live by principle in a world that has forgotten its roots. And once you hear what was found there, you will never look at him the same again. Before that barn door swung open and shocked everyone, to understand its mystery, you first have to understand the man behind it, Eustace Conway. For decades, he has been more than just a character on Mountain Men. He has been a living symbol of independence, a man who refused to be tamed by convenience, screens, and 9-to-5 routines. While the rest of the world raced toward technology and comfort, Eustace walked in the opposite direction, straight into the wild, and into a life carved from rivers, forests, and hard sweat, born with a restless spirit. Eustace was never the kind of child who sat still. His earliest memories weren't on couches watching cartoons. They were in the woods, learning the language of leaves, creeks, and creatures. By the time he was a teenager, he could hunt, track, build, forage, and survive in conditions many modern people wouldn't last a day in. Where others saw wilderness, he saw home. By his 20s, he wasn't just camping in the woods. He was living there full-time, embracing the rhythm of nature like it was a heartbeat. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't stubbornness. It was calling. Some people spend their lives searching for meaning. Eustace found his under open skies under the cry of hawks, with dirt under his fingernails and purpose in every breath. And it wasn't long before his way of life drew attention. People wanted to learn from him, the last frontier man, the teacher of forgotten wisdom. So he founded Turtle Island Preserve, a place where he could share what the modern world had lost. Connection, discipline, simplicity, respect for the land, and the spiritual grounding that only nature can give. But life in the wild is beautiful and brutal in equal measure. Living close to nature means living close to danger. Storms, sickness, tools that can injure, animals that can strike. And as Eustace taught others to live off the land, he faced constant battles outside of it. Government regulations, lawsuits, land rights, rising costs, and a rapidly changing world that didn't always understand him. Every fence he built, every shelter he raised, every law he fought, it all took something out of him. Yet he never complained. He simply kept building, kept teaching, kept giving. The barn, the same one that would later stun everyone, stood quietly through all of it, weathered and timeless. Visitors saw it as a simple structure, nothing more than wood, tools, feed, perhaps the bones of old projects. But those close to Eustace noticed his connection to that building. He would vanish inside for hours, sometimes days, working in silence. Some evenings, as lantern light flickered through the cracks, you could see him moving, crafting, storing, preserving. But no one knew exactly what. Whispers began. "What is he keeping in there? Why does he guard it so closely? What is he preparing for?" The barn was locked, not with fear, but with purpose. Eustace wasn't a man who hoarded wealth or chased status. If he protected something, it wasn't for ego, it was for meaning. Years passed, and the barn aged like an old mountain secret. But as Eustace got older, the stakes changed. His life became less about survival and more about legacy. The world outside accelerated, louder, faster, more disconnected. And Eustace seemed to lean deeper into the earth, becoming more protective, more thoughtful, more aware that the knowledge he carried could fade if he didn't preserve it carefully. So when the day finally came, and trusted friends unlocked the barn while Eustace watched in silence, no one knew what to expect: danger, treasure, relics, or something far more human. What they found struck them not with fear, but with emotion. It wasn't a hiding place. It was a vault of meaning, a lifetime of passion, memory, and purpose stored in wood and shadow. This barn wasn't built to hide secrets. It was built to protect a legacy the modern world had forgotten. And when its contents were revealed, hearts did not race. They broke, softly and deeply. When the doors creaked open, the air inside the barn felt thick, like it had been holding its breath for years. Dust floated through slants of sunlight, dancing softly as if even nature understood something sacred was about to be revealed. Those who stepped in expecting tools, storage bins, or hunting gear stopped in their tracks, their voices falling to nothing. What they found was not the stockpile of a survivalist, but the soul of a man laid bare. Along the walls were shelves, not filled with weapons or hoarded supplies, but stacks of handwritten journals. Dozens of them. Leather-bound, weather-worn, each page filled with years of thoughts, lessons, fears, frustrations, hopes and reflections on the land, life, and humanity. Page after page documented storms survived, animals healed, students taught, seasons observed. It was Eustace Conway's life, his mind, every triumph, every heartbreak, every quiet moment of peace written down so nothing would ever be forgotten. Beside them sat carefully crafted tools, each one handmade or restored. Tools that seemed ancient but carried a tenderness. Axes sharpened perfectly. Wooden handles polished smooth from generations of touch. Animal hide satchels, hand-woven baskets, hand-carved spoons and bowls. Not relics of the past, but living proof that Eustace never lived survival as a performance. He lived it as devotion. There were old boots worn to the threads, jackets patched lovingly, a canteen dented from years on the trail. Maps drawn by hand marking creeks, forage spots, medicine plants, and sacred spaces deep in the forest. It wasn't preparation, it was preservation. Eustace wasn't hiding from the world. He was recording the wisdom he feared the world was losing. In the center of the barn stood something even more powerful, a wooden chest. Not locked, not sealed, just closed gently as if waiting. When it was opened, inside lay letters, tied bundles of them, some old and yellowed, some recent. Letters from students thanking him for teaching them discipline. From young people who said he saved their lives by giving them purpose. From parents who said he changed their children. From strangers he'd helped without ever seeking recognition. There were letters of apology from those who misunderstood him. Notes from former friends who had drifted away, regretting time lost. Words from viewers who said watching him gave them courage to try, to live, to break free from fear, and beneath the letters, a few faded photographs. A younger Eustace with a quiet smile, his mother's hand resting on his shoulder. A friend who had passed on. A dog long gone, eyes bright and loyal. Moments of love, held safe where time couldn't take them. But what truly broke everyone was the back corner. There, carefully preserved and covered to protect from dust, sat unfinished projects, boughs half-shaped, leather in the process of curing, wooden beams smoothed and ready to become cabins or shelters. It was clear he hadn't been stockpiling for danger. He had been preparing to build, for others, for the future, for a legacy. Even as age and struggle wore him down, he planned to keep giving. Next to the projects hung a small hand-carved sign. 5 words. Simple and raw. Leave the world better behind. No treasure, no weapons, no gold. Just knowledge, memory, purpose. Love for the land and for the people who would come after him. The shock wasn't from fear. but from emotion. The barn wasn't a shelter for supplies. It was a sanctuary for a lifetime of heart, discipline, and conviction. Eustace didn't store objects. He stored meaning, wisdom, evidence that his life, every hard mile of it, mattered. And as the silence hung heavy, one truth settled over everyone present. The most valuable things a person can leave behind are not possessions, but proof of who they truly were. As word spread about what lay inside Eustace Conway's barn, people began to understand something they had missed for years. Behind the rugged beard, the strong hands, and the calm voice of a mountain man, there lived a human being who had carried more than most could ever see. The journals weren't just records. They were echoes of a life spent fighting battles quietly, privately, without ever asking for applause. Eustace's journey was never just about living off the land. It was about surviving a world that constantly tried to pull him back into chaos. Many admired him for rejecting modern life, but few understood what that choice cost. As he built Turtle Island Preserve, he wasn't building a retreat. He was building sanctuary, not only for others, but for himself. Yet even a sanctuary cannot stop pain. For years, Eustace battled authorities who questioned his lifestyle, his structures, his teaching methods. Agencies came with paperwork and regulations, challenging a man who believed in nature's laws, not legal ones. He faced shutdowns, fines, accusations. People who once praised him turned cold when bureaucracy tightened its grip. Where others had armies of lawyers and millions in backing, Eustace had determination, a simple belief in what was right, and the land beneath his feet. But that wasn't the only pressure. Age crept in quietly. Bones that once leaped across logs began to ache. Muscles that once could work from dawn to midnight needed rest. Yet rest was a word Eustace had never learned. How could he pause when the world around him was forgetting the very skills he lived to teach? There were personal losses too. Close friendships that faded, partnerships that fractured, students who left, taking pieces of his dream with them, and perhaps hardest of all, the quiet loneliness that comes when you choose a path few understand. To be admired from afar is not the same as being truly known. Eustace taught thousands how to survive with fire and steel, but he weathered his most painful storms alone. Inside the barn, some journals revealed days when he felt the world didn't just misunderstand him, it rejected him. Days when government doors closed, when funding fell short, when land repairs outpaced energy, when his body reminded him that even legends face time. Days when the weight of living a life of truth nearly broke him. There were entries about nights spent awake worrying about the land, about the students, about his animals, about the dreams slipping through his fingers. He wrote not as a television personality, but as a man aching under responsibility, not only to survive himself, but to keep a way of life alive. And yet, in the darkest pages, there was something remarkable: hope. Even when he felt beaten, he believed in the good of people. He believed someone out there would carry the torch after him. Every wound he suffered, he turned into a lesson. Every disappointment, into resolve. He didn't hold anger. He held faith. That barn, filled with unfinished projects and stored knowledge, wasn't a symbol of failure. It was proof of how fiercely he fought. Proof that even when his body slowed, his spirit did not. He could have closed Turtle Island to the world, retreated deeper into the mountains, let bitterness take root. But he didn't. He kept teaching, kept smiling, kept believing that humanity could still rediscover its soul. The shock wasn't just what he kept in the barn, but what he kept inside himself all these years. Courage, pain, humility, and an unwavering commitment to something bigger than fame or fortune. And that is what makes his story heartbreaking. Not because he suffered, but because he suffered quietly, so others could learn loudly. When dawn breaks over Turtle Island, the fog hangs like a veil over the treetops, and the air carries that quiet purity only the deep woods can offer. It's in this stillness that Eustace Conway steps out of his barn, the same barn that, not long ago, stunned so many with what it revealed about the man behind the legend. But today there are no gasps, no shocked whispers, no crew with cameras. Just a man, worn by time but sharpened by purpose, moving through the world he built with his own hands. Life has a way of stripping us down to our truth. For Eustace, that truth has always been simple. Live free, live honest, live in harmony with the earth. But the world around him changed at a speed even he, the eternal wild soul, wasn't prepared for. The legal battles, the financial storms, the sudden intrusions of modern life, they didn't just threaten his land. They tested his spirit. And when people wondered what they'd find inside that barn, the answer wasn't gold, secrets, or scandal. It was struggle, sweat, prayers carved into wood grain, and a man holding on to a life many thought impossible. Now, standing in the golden hush of morning, Eustace isn't defeated. He's transformed. The barn has become a symbol, not of shock, but survival. Every tool, every mark, every rough-hewn board tells a story of a man who refused to walk away from the land that raised him. And even as age bends his shoulders just slightly, his eyes still burn with that wild, determined fire. Visitors still arrive from time to time, not to invade, but to learn. They watch him move through the forest as though it's breathing with him. They listen as he speaks, not with the voice of a reality TV figure, but with the steady presence of someone who has lived every word he teaches. And sometimes when the wind is right, they swear they can feel what he feels, that deep, ancient belonging to soil, sky, and silence. In a world chasing ease, Eustace chose effort. In a society drowning in noise, he chose stillness. Many thought he would fade away, swallowed by time and hardship. Instead, he became something rarer, a reminder that freedom still exists, that nature still heals, and that a life well lived isn't measured in comfort, but courage. The barn door creaks shut behind him as the sun climbs higher. Another day begins. Another chance to work, to breathe, to exist in defiance of everything the modern world says we must be. He doesn't make speeches or chase attention. He just lives, truer than most ever dare. Maybe that's what shook people the most. Not what was found in Eustace Conway's barn, but what it revealed. That even in our era of convenience and speed, a life of simplicity, grit, and heart is still possible, and still sacred. And as he walks into the woods, disappearing into the whispering pines, you can't help but wonder. Maybe the real shock wasn't in the barn at all.